I've got two microphones here, one for everyone in the theater and one for the television audience. So we are recording this program on DCAT, and in the back table when you go out, there's a little schedule of our rebroadcast. So be sure to pick one up if you want to watch this again. So my name is Sue Strand. I am the Director of Alumni and Special Events at Olympic College, and we are so pleased to have you here tonight for our first speaker of 2018. This is our second run at the Olympic College Alumni Speaker Series. We're going to have a great talk and program by Professor Amy Lawrence. But I've got a couple of announcements that I want to tell you about first. Okay, I think this form has been passed around to you. This is a survey form. We would like your feedback on tonight's program. It was invaluable last year when we did this series to get some ideas for what you're about to see this year. So we really take your comments to heart. We appreciate all feedback. There's also clipboards being passed around, and we're collecting the names of all our alumni and friends who are attending tonight, so you can be notified of future events at OC. And then just generally, I'd just like to say, there are a lot of really cool and exciting things happening at Olympic College right now. If you saw the Kitsap Sun today, you saw an article about the OC Promise, where we are in the middle of a fundraising campaign, so every student in Kitsap and Mason County can get a year of schooling here at Olympic College on any of our campuses. We are opening this brand new building, so I'm sure that you've been snooping around a little bit, looking at the art gallery, and this is one of the very first events in the theater, so we're so glad you're here. We will have a real screen, not like this, starting next week. It'll come down from the ceiling just like a regular movie theater, and there's a projection booth and lights and everything in the back, so that's coming probably next week. So I wanted to take this time then to introduce you to Miss Amy Lawrence. Amy's lived in this area most of her life. She attended Central Kitsap High School. She got her bachelor's degree in environmental science and regional planning from Washington State University, and then she got a master's in ecology from the University of Virginia. She worked as an environmental science and a consultant and policy analyst, and then later she was a biologist and worked in the field of wetland science, so she'll probably tell us a little more about some of that this evening. She's been with Olympic College since 2003, first as an adjunct professor and became a full-time faculty member in 2014. She is also the co-chair of the Chico Salmon Park Stewardship Project. And you've probably seen that as you drive between here and Silverdale. They have a great open house kind of event every fall when the salmon are coming back. And it's just a very interesting thing to learn about salmon and one of our keystone species here in this part of Washington. So please help me to welcome Amy Lawrence.
Thank you, Sue, and you stole one of my big stories about the park. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much to the Olympic College Foundation and the Alumni Association for the nice invitation to speak in our beautiful new venue. When they invited me to come speak about this, I was excited because I feel like there's a lot to share. There's a lot happening. With environmental stewardship and getting students involved. I was nervous because this isn't my normal 9 a.m. sleepy student lecture. Not that that's not great, but just a little slightly more intimidating than that. But also I thought it was a really good chance to kind of stop and reflect on the work that our students and you all have been doing since I've been a part of it for the last 15 years. I've been here almost 15 years. In March, it'll be 15 years. So this was a good chance for me to kind of compile some of our stories and brag a little bit about all the hard work that you students, you community members, you faculty and staff have been doing here at OC. What I'd like to share today is, first of all, what service learning means to me. So that word, that phrase is kind of it's kind of a buzzword right now, and a lot of different disciplines, I feel like, are using it, and so I want to explain how I use it, what it means to me, and how I use it in my courses here at Olympic College. I teach a majors biology series for students that want to continue on in the hard sciences. I also teach a general biology class for non-majors, and I teach an environmental issues class that's pretty much our environmental science 101. It's the closest thing we have to that. And so in that capacity, I see a range of different student types, and I incorporate it in a few different ways in those classes. I'd like to talk about where we are working and learning, and I'm going to focus on 3 places that are near and dear to my heart, but there's lots of others, and I'll try to hit on several of those other places. And then I'd like to focus most of my talk on why I think this is important. These are reasons that I believe service learning is important from my observations and from my students' reflections that they have to turn in. But I know one of the things that makes me a little nervous about presenting all of this is that so many of you are leaders in this work too. And so I want to represent your work fairly. And I hope at the end, some of you will chime in and share some of your observations and reflections as well. And then lastly, and sprinkled throughout, I'll be giving you ways that you students, you faculty, you staff, you community members can get involved in this kind of work as well. So, I promise these first few slides have the most words per slide. We're going to get into pictures later. I hope all of you can see this all right in the back and can hear me okay? Are we good? Okay. So, what is service learning? First off, it's volunteer activities. So, you can't get paid for this work. This is stuff you're doing on your own time, in your free time. This is stuff that is done in conjunction with a local nonprofit or educational institution. So a lot of times, one of the ways that I offer this service learning in my classes is by allowing students to kind of pick and choose different things they do, and they have to come up with a certain number of hours per quarter, and people start to get panicked at the end of the quarter. And they say, well, can I just go out and pick up litter or something? And that's really valuable, and it needs to happen. But the point of this is to get individual students connected with the community and connected with institutions and organizations out there that need help desperately. So it's got to be part of something larger than just themselves. It's got to be hands-on, so hopefully outside, hopefully in nature, not always, but most of the time. And obviously underlying my type of service learning, it has to have an environmental or sustainability focus. So those are my criteria for what I consider service learning in my classes. Some general examples, and then I'll get into a lot more specifics in the coming slides. Generally speaking, one of our big activities at a lot of different places is invasive species management, meaning we all know them, right? Things like English ivy, English holly, Himalayan blackberry. They really tend to take over a place and outcompete native vegetation that's so important for overall habitat and ecosystem diversity. So we do a lot of work to help restore stream areas, riparian areas, which are the areas right next to streams, marine areas sometimes, different sort of high value ecosystem areas. So that's a big part of it, and that's actually where a lot of this started, was with Dana Coggin, who's the Kitsap County Noxious Weed Coordinator. She would come into my classes and give a little spiel, and then we'd head out in the rain usually and start pulling weeds, and it was fun, and it was good, and we went to lots of different parks doing that. But then it's kind of evolved into covering a broader array of service-type activities. One of those is in monitoring. Different kinds of data collection and monitoring, and that is an area that's really in high need in environmental restoration work. Usually there's money to build stuff, but not a lot of money to watch it after it's there, and to monitor its progress, and to see what happens. Do salmon come back? What happens to the plants we planted? So this is where citizen science, with regular old people, in conjunction with scientists that do that for their job, can really make a big difference and can fill that gap. Education, so not just learning stuff themselves, but then going back out and educating others. That's another big way that our students are doing that kind of service learning. Trail maintenance is a big one, improving public access in a lot of our parks that need volunteer help to be maintained. And then the last category that I've been working on a bit more lately is getting students involved in local government and how local land use and environmental decisions get made. So I'll talk about more specific examples of all of those, that's just to orient you to what I'm talking about here. And how do I do this? This is kind of the nitty-gritty of how I hook students into this and the different ways that that can happen. The first way is just a straight-up requirement as part of their lab credit. So all the classes I teach have the regular old lecture part, and then they have the part in the lab. For my environmental issues class, I feel like it's really important to get them outside. And so they are required to have 15 hours of service learning over the course of a quarter, which here at OC is about 10 to 11 weeks. So that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it turns out to be, pretty significant effort, both to find activities that are close to you or that you're interested in or that are happening when you're available. A lot of our students are, juggling families and jobs, and so fitting that in can be challenging. But I like it because it's customizable to what they're interested in and to what they're passionate about, and it's not making them do the same kind of thing every time. They can pick and choose. And I'll have a list of things that are available, like kind of a calendar, and then if there's not something that works for them, they can find something else and ask me about it. It has to meet those criteria that I mentioned earlier. And the big part I like about this is I get to sneak in like a lesson on time management, which anyone who's ever taken my class or lived in my house with me knows that's a big deal in my life, and I think a real key to success. So that's another benefit of that type of activity. I also do just regular old field-based assignments where they go outside and learn about plants or learn about salmon life cycle or collect data on something. I do extra credit, so hence all these people here tonight. If you are missing a few points, you can earn up to a maximum number of points by doing this kind of thing. Some of them are meetings like this. Most of them are actually out of the parks doing stuff. Part of ongoing research, we've been lucky enough to be able to partner a lot with Western Washington University and their 4-year program in environmental studies. And Professor Janice Bauman, who's here tonight, she works with me a lot on providing awesome research opportunities for our students at a range of different sites. Some as close as Erlin's Point Preserve, and some as far away as the Elwha River watershed, which I'll talk about in a second. So that's really exciting for our students at this level to be exposed to ongoing research. And then this last opportunity is something new that I've been working on with a student who's here tonight, Bree Grimm, and we've been working on a ecological, historical research project at the Barner Learning Landscape, and she's earning independent study credit for that. So that's kind of a new pathway for service learning that we're exploring. As a part of all these, I think I mentioned, or most of these anyways, students have to, when they come back, it's not just doing the work, but then it's thinking about it afterwards. Thinking about what it meant to them personally, thinking about what it meant to them, what it meant to the area ecologically. So they have to reflect a little bit, and you'll notice from here on out, I'll be having some quotes on the page, on the screen, and that's where I'm getting the quotes, is straight from the students. And it's based on those reflection assignments that they do. So where do we do this work? Places as close as a couple hundred yards away from here at the Barner Learning Landscape, which I'll talk about next, to local parks, a variety of local parks in the city and the county, local restoration sites that aren't technically part of a park, but that are part of a project to restore a stream or remove a culvert or something. And then we've been working a little bit at Olympic National Park. So a range of different sites. This picture here is from a little park close by called Erlin's Point Preserve that we've just started working at. There's a nice pond there. We've been doing some turtle research there. We've been doing some ivy management, but that's where you students come in. That's going to be a big one. So let's just go through a few specific examples, my favorite spaces, both close and far, that we like to work. The first is the Barner Learning Landscape. I know many of you have heard of that. If you've been in my class, you've certainly heard of it. But it is a beautiful 2.5 acre piece of property that is part of the Olympic College Bremerton campus. It became part of our campus in 2009. And prior to that, it was the home for, I should really do the math someday, like 80-ish years of the Barner family, who built a beautiful historic home there. And Mrs. Barner was an avid gardener. She planted, we haven't been able to count all the different plants she planted. There's also been some non-native plant infestation since the time that they have lived there. In 2003 is when she passed away. So this is a rich opportunity for lots of outdoor learning, lots of outdoor work, and also some interesting research and connection to the local history of Bremerton and of this area. So it's a fabulous area. I was inspired to start working here by retired Professor Sue Digby, who's here tonight, and she kind of opened the door to this amazing resource, and together we were able to collaborate. She strong-armed me. No, she didn't. We went together and we decided we're just going to start taking our students out here, opening up that gate and taking them out there. And the amazing part is that we can get out there in a 50-minute class period and do something outside. We can look at some plants. We can even pull some ivy. We can get students outside looking at being quiet for a little while. It's an amazing resource we have right at our fingertips, and when it's hard for some students to get access to faraway research stations, this is something we all have access to right here. We also, it's contiguous with the water, with the Port Washington Narrows that run right out here and connect the larger Puget Sound area with Chico Creek and Clear Creek, which are very productive salmon spawning streams. So this, right now, we do not have access to this beach. We can't take students down there, but that's a dream that we have, to provide accessible beach access so that we can study the intertidal zone here and expand our learning opportunities even more. The second place you're going to hear a lot about in this talk is Chico Salmon Park. That is also a Kitsap, this is a Kitsap County park, a little bit north of here, on the way to Silverdale. As Sue said, the site of an amazing salmon return in the fall. It's close to the mouth of Chico Creek, where it meets up with Dyes Inlet, which is right here. And it was kind of neglected. It's a 4.5 acre park that was, again, overgrown, underutilized, and a group of us, many of them are here today, under the direction of Lori Raymaker, who's the Kitsap County Parks volunteer coordinator, not just for Chico Salmon Park, but for tons of parks all over our county. We decided we wanted to kind of adopt the park and install some trails, make it more accessible to the public, restore some of the stream habitat, remove some of the invasive stuff, the usual stuff. And since 2013, students have been out there almost every month working on this park, and it's a jewel. People love this park now, and it's used really heavily all year round, not just when salmon are there. And it's something I know I'm really proud of, and my students are really proud of, and has established a real connection between OC students and the community. And this is the nitty-gritty of what happens out there. Lots of wheelbarrowing and bark spreading and stuff like that. And then the last major site that I want to focus on is something a little bit bigger, a little bit farther away. Not that far away, though, really, in the scheme of things. It only takes about an hour and a half to get there from here. It seems farther than that, but it's pretty close. We do a day-long field trip there twice a year, usually with Janice's students, too. And this is the site of the largest dam removal project, for sure, in U.S. history. I've read things that say in world. And it's amazing in its scope and in its scale. And it really provides students with another example of, at the other end of the extreme, the other end of the spectrum, about how restoration work is done. And this is providing students with an opportunity to see what happens when you kind of get out of nature's way and let it do its thing. We've removed, lots of other people, removed 2 almost 100-year-old dams that had blocked the flow of the Elwha River for almost 100 years, and in doing so released literally millions of cubic yards of sediment and allowed the stream to do its thing again. So we've been able to watch this happen and watch it unfold and watch it come back to life. This is on the upstream side of the upper dam, the Glines Canyon Dam, and they left the sides of the dam there, which I think is kind of neat for scale, so you can see what it used to look like. So students will come out, take a field trip out here, go down to the lower dam. This is the site of what was the Elwha Dam, and behind it was Lake Aldwell. And then we go all the way out to the mouth if we have time, if we haven't dawdled too much at the other places, and we look at the mouth where all this sediment that was trapped behind the dams now resides and formed new estuary habitat. We've also, so we go there, we observe, we document what happens out there, and also we've been able to do a little bit of help with some research that's ongoing out there, which I'll talk about later on. So that's kind of where three important places we work. I want to spend the rest of the time talking about what I think are the reasons why it's important. And there's a lot of them. The first, I have to start with this one. I have to start with the educator one. It promotes hands-on learning. So I can talk until I'm blue in the face about, what plant roots look like and what benthic macroinvertebrates are. But until you see one in person and collect them, like these students, like these students are doing here, or try to pull some ivy roots like those students did here. Only when you do that and put your hands on them and put your eyes on them and touch them do you really realize the power of some of these invasive plants and kind of the diversity of the ecosystem in a stream. So that's one of the things I love to see students discover. Sorry, I'm at a bad angle for this. When they're sampling for macroinvertebrates, meaning stream bugs, they didn't know all that stuff lived in the rocks of a stream before. So that's kind of fun to see them discover that. The other thing that's pretty magical is just the straight up, the story of salmon coming back. And I've had students say things like, I've learned about salmon. I knew that they were around. I knew they were important around here, but I've never actually seen one that isn't in the grocery store. So getting to see one in its natural habitat and watch it spawning up close is really powerful. And they don't forget that after the textbook is, after they're done reading their textbook and done taking all the tests in class. Another powerful way that students learn, I think, is by, I think I mentioned it earlier, teaching others. So one of the projects Sue and I started is to have students go out to Barner and also other places on our campus. We've installed them everywhere. Some of them are still there. Have them pick a plant and then do some research and write a poster. And it kind of, when you learn something and then teach it to others, that will stay with you. And when students go back out to Barner or to where their plant is, I see them kind of, walk over to it and tell someone else about it. So they've got that. That's there. That's going to stay with them. And also, it helps educate others. I mean, there's a value to that too. So this kind of service learning builds practical skills. It's always fun to watch a group of students, the first work party of the quarter, walk to a park and be faced with something like this. You can tell the people whose parents made them work out in the yard and whose didn't. And I think knowing how to handle a shovel or a rake and a wheelbarrow is a valuable skill. It promotes us having job-ready students, and a lot of these fields that I'm teaching students in are going to require some actual physical labor as part of the work that gets done. So these are practical skills that students need to have, and we are ready to teach them. We're ready to teach them how to make a trail, how to slope it so that the water doesn't pool up on it, how to spread the bark in the right way. It sounds simple, but there's tricks for all this stuff. We're there to tell them how best to handle ivy and blackberry and all those things that are taking over some of our parks. This is also at Chico. And so these types of skills, this is a group of students this last fall out at Elwha, helping Janice measure the growth of some of the plants that have been planted in the former lake beds at the Elwha. And so they're learning how to collect data, which doesn't seem like a skill that is really necessary, but it is. Attention to detail, learning how to record something so that someone else can go back and understand it and interpret it and collect it in a consistent manner. These are all practical skills that scientists need. Also, working with a group. This happens in lab, but it's even more effective outside when you're thrown together with a group of people you may not have worked with before, and you're assigned a task, like taking a sample in, this is Chico again, taking a sample and measuring or collecting stream bugs and how to install the right equipment and how to collect it and how to follow appropriate protocols. We get to go out here every fall with Mauro Hein, who's here, and Renee Scherdnink with Clean Water Kitsap, and they allow our students to be part of the ongoing data monitoring, data collection and monitoring of this creek to see how it's doing. And so this is group dynamics and also data collection. One of the biggest things, I was just talking with one of my students this afternoon, that students can take away from this work is just to become more aware of what's going on in the local environment from an environmental and a restoration perspective. People don't know about a lot of this stuff that's going on around here. And if they don't know, they obviously can't do it. So this is a picture of the Clear Creek Trail, which is an amazing resource that we have here in the Silverdale, Greater Bremerton area. It extends all the way through the urban sprawl of Silverdale along Clear Creek, and it's an amazing resource, but it needs a lot of work. Mary Earle is here tonight too. She manages the group of volunteers there very well and has been amazing over the last lots of years at allowing my students opportunities to go out here and do things ranging from trail maintenance to weeds and all that stuff, but also to help get them involved in the Salmon in the Classroom program, which allows students, elementary students, to rear up salmon and then release them in the streams. And our OC students go out and help with that. So that's been a really fun connection to make. This last fall, we also worked with Jesse Adams, who is with Kitsap Conservation District, and he provided my students with the opportunity to go out a little bit upstream of Clear Creek proper and help with some native planting in the riparian area there. And they put in 2 really hard days of work in the rain, weather kind of like this, and planted well over 300 plants. So that was a meaningful restoration exercise activity that people don't know about unless they're connected with it. And there's opportunity for lots of people to get involved in stuff like that. There's 2 other parks I want to mention that have graciously opened up their volunteer groups to our OC students over the years, and that is the Illahee Preserve. Vilk Olsch and Jim Aho have been gracious about opening up their park to work parties to our students. And the Newberry Hill Heritage Park, Tom Coleman has supervised lots of my students out there working at those amazing parks as well. And then back out to the Elwha, again, something, a huge, massive restoration project that not a lot of people even here know about, and my students have increased their awareness of that, have gone out, have helped, and have been able to make an impact on that important work out there. Back closer to home, this is another view of Barner from the other side. Again, the awareness piece. I would say 10% of the students that I teach every quarter know about the existence of this. And so the more students we know about, the more students we can inform about this resource we have here, the more engaged they can be in planning for its future. So that's a valuable piece of all this. I hope that this work, and I believe that this work does, promote ongoing environmental stewardship. So not just our OC students, not just the people that are directly involved, but their kids, their families, and the people that are around them. I hope that it will inspire even the next generation. It will become something normal that their families do, go out and do this kind of volunteer work. So this is another picture from Mary Earle showing the Salmon in the Classroom program, and then another program out at Clear Creek, the Discovery Playdates that I started with Denise, who I don't think is here, but we did it when our kids were little as kind of a way to get our kids outside, and then eventually the program is still going on. We got some of the OC students involved with that too, so that's another kind of ongoing thing that our work has done. I wanted to show a picture of Eco the whale because I feel like that's an ongoing thing that I got to be a part of just last spring. Eco was built by Marie and Sue and their efforts and their students. I don't know exactly the year, but I know it was in the Capitol building in 2014, right? And when it's made of debris that was gathered by students, marine debris, and when the plastic started coming off the whale, Marie had the great idea that we should repurpose the internal frame part, which I'm not sure you can see very well in that picture. It's kind of extending that way. And so we kind of collaborated. Her students installed the frame. My students researched and investigated some plants that we could install, native plants, of course, no ivy, on the whale itself to make it kind of a topiary whale. It's not quite there yet, but they survived our horrible summer. And we're going to get students back out there to maintain that area over the next quarter. We've also, since that time, installed, with the help of the OC Foundation, some interpretive signs that tell you what the name of the plants are, and there's been ceramic tile put around there by Marine students too. So this is something students are really proud of doing, and it lasts beyond the quarter they did the project in. They can go by and admire it as they're here, and I've had students say that they take pride in something that's ongoing, that's going to be a part of this campus for years to come. It provides a really high-value service. I've alluded to this throughout, but I just wanted to come right out and say it, that a lot of this work that students are doing and that you all are leading them in would not get done without volunteers. So monitoring work, this is monitoring work that's being done. This picture is of at the mouth of Clear Creek, where it exits out under the new bridge under Buckland Hill. They just finished that restoration project. And we have been part of the monitoring that went on before, during, and after that new bridge was installed. And that's something my students, they learned something from the monitoring experience, how you do that, but also this data is something that probably just wouldn't be gathered if it weren't for these kinds of service learning. This work is valuable monetarily too. The county values it at $30 per hour, and in 2017 at our park alone, our students worked 129 hours. And I know that's an underestimate, and I know they worked at lots of other parks. But this is just one small part of the massive volunteer effort that happens at all of our parks, and plugging our students into that is really important. This is Sue's work from her marine debris collection in just over 3 years. I know she probably did it longer than that, but students report that when they go out and do this kind of thing, when they pick up trash, when they're part of a coordinated effort, they can see that their small actions add up, and indeed they do. And this kind of work wouldn't happen, again, without our volunteers. We participated in fish counts at the Union River, where it lets out into Hood Canal, and we're part of the sort of citizen science effort to count the number of salmon returning. So that was a new opportunity just this last fall. Something that comes up again and again after students come back from working on these kinds of projects is that they felt this sense of accomplishment, the sense of purpose, the sense of self-worth that they don't get from, finishing that assignment or reading that chapter of the textbook. And it's powerful, and it lasts with them longer than just that one day. One of the really fun things that we get to do, that we've been doing for several years now, is work with Renee Johnson at WSU Extension in Kitsap County here. And she helps to organize the Salmon Tours every year. And this is a picture from this last fall. So she'll bring experts into my class and then teach them about salmon, teach them about the life cycle. We even got to dissect salmon this last quarter. And then they learn enough to go out and serve as docents for the big public event. And that's why I have that get out of your comfort zone quote there, because most of the students really don't want to do that. They don't like the sound of that at all. They don't feel like they will learn enough to become experts in just the course of one quarter. But they do, and because they have to. Because they have to get some service hours in, and it's a fun way to do it. And at the end of the day, you can just tell they're lifted, they're elevated. They feel like they've done something new that they haven't done before. And that is important, and that will maybe encourage them to go out and do something like that again. I was hoping Dana wasn't here. I don't know if she is here, but these are my students pulling knotweed out of the middle of the stream. Knotweed, K-N-O-T, weed, and you're not supposed to pull it, but sometimes you just have to when it's growing out in the middle of the stream. You're not supposed to manually pull it because it can send out chemicals that will actually facilitate it to grow even more. But this patch hasn't come back, I've been watching. So these are students that see the results of their hard work at the end of a few hours. And that's not something you can get very often, is actually visualizing the results of your work. And similarly, we've, after a few hours work at Barner, we get these nice, big, rewarding piles of ivy just sitting there showing us how hard we've worked. And that's really empowering, and it tells students that their hard work can pay off, and shows what the action of just a small group of people can accomplish in a pretty short amount of time. One of the more important lessons that I think this kind of work takes or leaves with our students is gives them a greater sense of place. This is an old picture from the UW Special Collections showing the Barner House shortly after it was constructed in 1936. And we've been doing work out here both ecologically and historically, and students are really falling in love with not just the physical place, but the story of the place and the people that lived there. And it teaches students that people came before us, and we're here now, and there'll be people after us. And I think all that's a really important part of that ethic of sustainability and environmental stewardship. We actually uncovered a path that was buried in blackberry and ivy. And the only reason we knew it was there is because we were fortunate enough to meet the children and grandchildren of the Barners at a story walk a couple years ago, not this summer, but last summer. And they said, there used to be a path down there. And so we couldn't see it at all. And so I gave that as a project at our next ServiceLearning. I said, I think there's a path in there somewhere. You should find it. And sure enough, we found these steps right here. And those students, it was really fun. They came back every time, and we've maintained that trail now, and we're going to improve it, and so that it's a little safer to make your way down there, and it's pretty steep. But again, it's fostering that sense of history, that we aren't the only ones. This time isn't the only time. These places have a past, and it's important to preserve them. And this work restores a connection to nature that I think is absent in a lot of standard classrooms and a lot of standard lives. It forces students to make an excuse to get outside. I think they want to. I think they just feel like they can't justify it because it's not on their to-do list, and it's not, a thing to check off. It's not a job. It's not a class. It's not anything they can check off. But that connection is important and has real benefits. It causes them to be still and to observe things that they might not observe otherwise. And I think these students' quotes speak for themselves. Can you read those? I've been assuming you can. You can't. Darn, sorry. So this says, the fact still remains that we must be cognizant of our surroundings in order to preserve the world we live in. And these are quotes directly from student assignments. I'm going to go back because this one says, I like your way of providing extra credit to the class. I think it helps students become connected to their environment and their communities. So these are things I'm not prompting, they're just coming from them. The gift of nature is a big part of my healing. So we have students that are coming to college as a way of starting a new chapter in their life, and they're overcoming challenges, and having a reason to get outside and go places is a powerful part of their healing. I had a student say in the car, or in the van on the way back from the Elwha, the last time we were there, that it's impossible to be unhappy out here. And how often can you hear something like that and make that happen for your students? The last major benefit, I think, is a really important one, and that is it promotes civic engagement and community connections. I think it's really important for our students to feel like they have a voice in local policymaking, and a lot of times, again, they're not aware that they have that voice and that there's a forum for their thoughts. And so I've most recently been encouraging them to attend Central Kitsap Community Council meetings, and that is an advisory group to the Kitsap County Commissioners. They have decided, the council has decided to have a permanent position for a student in this area. So I'm gonna encourage my students, of course, to apply for that position. I think the more engaged and connected our informed students are, the better off we will all be. And it connects them not just to formal civic bodies, but to other civic groups like these volunteer stewardship groups that exist, groups that have similar interests that they do, and groups that have similar interest in the outdoors and environmental preservation. And hopefully those connections will persist beyond the class they take with me. And it enables me to continue the connection that I have with some of my students who go on to the Western Washington University four-year program, and they come back to the park where they started, and I get to keep track of them, and that's all amazing. And I want to end on the possibility of this type of work to build future connections. And one of those places I think we really can build a strong connection ecologically, historically, culturally to our surrounding area is by really developing the Barner Learning Landscape as a formal education center. We, meaning Bree, my student Bree, and I have been doing a lot of research and coordination and interviews with local people that have information about this property, and there's a lot of connections to our local history here that we value and we want to try to preserve. And so we're just in the process of developing this formal plan for how we'd like to use this space educationally and as a community resource. So I just wanted to list, I know no one can read these, but I've mentioned almost all of these people. This is a wonderful group of people that I've felt privileged to work with and privileged to connect our students with, and none of this could happen without them. And I also wouldn't be giving a good talk if I didn't plug my upcoming events. So this Saturday, you can get started with your new commitment to civic involvement, environmental involvement, by coming out to Chico Salmon Park for our first work party of 2018. There's a Facebook page, you can check it out there. And also we have events at Barner, 2 of them scheduled this quarter, one of them on Friday the 16th of February and one of them on Friday, March 2nd. So those will be kind of, you can see the site, but we'll be pulling ivy and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's a chance to see the property and help out. So I just want to thank you for your time tonight and appreciate you coming out on this rainy night, and I hope you share my perspective that creating these kinds of engaged and active and educated students is really important for all of us. So thank you, and I'd encourage any questions or comments. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Who had a question? Yeah.
Are the salmon returning to the Elwha?
Yeah, are the salmon returning to the Elwha? Yes, they are already. They returned almost immediately, like the next year. Janice, do you have anything to add?
It was interesting because the conservation,
Okay, hold please. We need to get you a microphone.
that there was some initiative to bring peaks in to protect them during the restoration. And it was surprising to them that the peaks were returning even before they re-released them after that waterway.
So they were ahead of us. The natural salmon were ahead of us. We tried to help them along and they didn't need it. Yes. Good question. The long-term prognosis, well, there's a lot of people studying that. I think it's good. I mean, I think the cool thing about that restoration project is that it's not a lot of our help with it. We just remove the dams and we're letting the stream find its own path and letting the animals return, and I think they'll do their thing. What do you think, Janice? Is that the right prognosis?
Well, I keep trying to get there and then the road washed out.
Yes.
And now I'm under landscape advisory, or landslide advisory hazard, so
Her research site, the one I showed the pictures of, you can't access by car anymore, so it's like a 4-mile hike in just to get there. So I'm all for that, but it limits the time you can spend out there and the gear you can pack out there.
Bishop's put geomorphology, it's still kind of a wild card of how this
Yeah.
is going to appear.
Yeah. I mean, that whole story is like 5 OC Alumni Association speaker series talks, so yes, yes. You got your next lineup. Yes?
In addition to the educational activity, environmental monitoring, what agencies are actively using your data and publishing it?
As far as publishing it, like Clean Water Kitsap, I know publishes, I don't know where he went, publishes the results of the benthic macroinvertebrate sampling, for example. And so for each stream that they sample, they track the score that the stream gets from year to year. I'm trying to think what other data I mentioned. So I don't know if any agency is tracking any of the data we're collecting, Janice. That's more research stuff.
I'm working on a paper right now that you were involved in, Beaver Creek.
Oh, yes. I don't know if any of my students got out there. That was more in my...
But that
Yeah.
was a project
Okay.
that you started and helped us on that is now in process.
I'm trying to think, Mary, where did Mary go? Is any of your water quality data being compiled by an agency? Or is that just Chris keeping track of it?
We compile our water quality data ourselves, and we have made a couple of presentations, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot of places that will accept the data because you have to be certain that they follow certain protocols, in order for it to be published like that.
But it's something, whereas we had nothing before. Yes, yes. And I know it's becoming part of the literature, and it's going to be published, I'm sure, at some point. Chris will, yeah. Good question. Yeah?
Question and then a comment. If you think back, it's like really amazing when you see all the work that you do, and I kind of wondered to myself, how did you know how to do that? Is there someone in your past that inspired? And then just a comment to follow up. If I think of the quarter of students that come through OC and have this, and if they keep this connection to community and to the environment with them throughout their generations and inspire others, what an impact.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect. I'm not sure I can repeat that whole question, Sue. I'm supposed to be repeating it for the, yeah, that's okay.
The first part, who inspired you to
What inspired me? Well, I'm going to say that there was a quarter when I didn't have a class to teach, and my husband David saw a thing in the paper for a native plant class, and he's like, you would be interested in that. And so I was like, I would be. Just me being interested in that. And then I went to the native plant class, and then all of a sudden these volunteer kind of efforts sparked from that, because we'd go out to the parks and we'd see the parks, and then we'd see all the people out there. And then I was teaching here, and I thought, I don't know. That's the path, the clearest path I can identify. I think it was just a culmination of my interest and learning more about the plants we have around here and what was affecting their distribution, and then how we could get students involved. Yeah. And a good way to get outside. I didn't want to be in the lab all the time, right? Sure, the Camperdown elm. Is that what you're, there's lots of special trees, but I happen to have a slide. There it is. Did you look at my notes before? So this is a Camperdown elm. These aren't the greatest of pictures, but it's a tree that is not, it won't reproduce from seed anymore. It's a grafted tree. So every Camperdown elm that exists now came from an original elm tree that was a mutant tree that was found on the Camperdown estate in Scotland. And so someone thought the way that it grew like this, it's not bonsai or anything, it just grows like that. Someone thought that was cool and wanted to spread it, so they took some of it and grafted it onto another elm. And so that's the way it's propagated now. Every tree comes from that original Camperdown elm, that original mutant tree. So it's really lovely. This is it without its leaves. It's deciduous, so when it leaves out, it creates kind of this big umbrella-looking thing. But the interesting part, I think, is the formation of the trunk. There's another really big one out at Port Gamble. If you've ever seen that one there, out near the water, right to the right of the general store. It's got a sign and everything. They're pretty rare, so yeah. We have one right here. Yes?
Amy, thank you very much for your talk tonight. This is really important stuff, and I appreciate your sharing.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's just so important, your good work to help inspire the students to help be the future stewards of nature. But I question for some of us older wannabe students, do you know of any opportunities that there may be for folks that would want to go on kind of a science-oriented field trip to the Elwha?
Well, they did for a while.
I got just the job for you.
There we go. We'll be talking.
I know that the National Park Service was doing field trips right after the restoration was complete. So you can go on their website and there were public tours being offered. I think those are done now. Janice, do you know of any other, I mean, I can hook you up with a good route to go see it all. There's public viewpoints, if I can go back. You can, I have to go way back. The Elwha, the lower dam, you can easily get to the overlook that I showed in the picture, right off of 107, 112, yeah. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. No, I don't know of any formal trips like that for the public to the Elwha. I know that sometimes they do tours of our local restoration sites, like at Clear Creek, they did that bus tour after it was done. Right? Does someone know about that? Lori, do you know about that?
Yeah, they did.
I don't know who did that. Was that?
It was Public Works.
Public Works, okay. So sometimes after we have completed our local restoration stuff, we will offer tours to the public. I've noticed that. What? Perhaps. Yes. On the website, if I contact them? Yes, perhaps.
Yes. I recommend taking your class, environmental.
Yes.
So, yes.
Good plug, thanks, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can take the class, let's do it. I know you have plenty of time, you're not doing anything else, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Are you?
Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. No, yeah.
When this is shown on the television, is it possible for you to provide them with the slides? So
Yes, I am doing that. Yes, can't email it to them. It's a huge file, but I will get it to them soon. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Amy.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Please fill out your evaluation form. And I know that I noticed the clipboards are still going around, so I'm going to go to the back on your way out. And I'll have Amy draw the winner of our prize. What?
Heather Newcomer. Yay. Our new library faculty. Yay. A lovely OC picnic basket. Yes. Anything else?